So let's take a look. Now, unlocking it is as easy as looking at it and swiping up. And let's try that again. Ho, ho, ho. Let's go to backup here.
Bad times turn to good memories. Smile. Even when I'm gone and you remember me. Smile. Good times never fade away. Smile. Even if I'm not what you hear today.
What is the deal, beautiful people? It's your boy Ramon, Lifestyles Defined, back in the building. Let's talk about the iPhone 10 or the iPhone X, as Apple would have it. I don't know. This is a very strange thing for me. I find myself defending this phone more than anything, and as most of you know, I don't like to defend anything Apple. But I don't have much to quarrel about here with what Apple's doing. Do I think that it is a mind-blowing device, like something we've never seen before? No. Do I think that any of the competitors on the market are close? Not really. So just give me a chance to defend myself and where I stand. I guess we should get into the design. Obviously, that is part of the most, it's the allure of this thing. And many of you keen-eyed folks among you would say, oh, it looks like a Galaxy. And I know there's people out there who hated the design of the Galaxy and who are going to love this. I mean, it's a rectangle. It's with bezels and a curved display. These things look like what they are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get into the debate of who looks like what. I think it's an attractive design. I like the completely flush front of it. There's no home button. For years, people's been leaning into Apple about how they've been wasting space with the home button and the chins at the top or the bottom, and then at the top there's too much space. Well, here you go. They seem to have solved that, so not much to quarrel about there. Still a beautiful device, glass in the front, glass on the bottom. I guess if you look toward the back, I would say probably the most distasteful part of it is how the camera cluster is set up vertically. And that's only probably because we've never seen anything like it. And like most things, Apple, or most things in general, you use it every day, these slight pickings start to disappear. So you'll get used to it. I'm sure you will. What I will say is I do not like the notch on the top of the display in the front. And I get it. More on what's in there later, that truedepth technology, whatever it is. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I get it. There's a crap load of sensors and camera stuff behind there. I think to the tune of like 5. And there's still a speaker somewhere in there. So it's hiding some tech. And if you're going to go bezel-less, yes, there are going to be some things or some trade-offs. And we see this sort of the same design with the Essential phone. So I guess a lot of you nerds like I am are used to this. And again, when you pick this phone up and even though looking at the videos of it and looking at when you play full screen video and how that notch is just painfully there, I'm pretty sure it'll disappear over time. It is the way it is. I'm not going to really harp on it. Hardware wise, it's got that new A11 processor, Bionic is what they're calling it. And I don't really talk much about hardware and specs in Apple's world because, truth be told, it never really matters. I mean, Apple's been doing their custom chips for a while, and their phones remain super snappy in comparison to the competition. It's usually a dance to get the specs for the amount of RAM and battery size out of an iPhone, and then it comes out like 2 or 3 months later when people get their hands on it, and it's never really the same amount of RAM as the competitors over in Android. It's never the biggest battery like the competitors are over at Android. But the issue remains for the Android competitors is that Apple still boasts some of the best battery life, and it still boasts some of the best performance. So the hardware specs here matter very little. Never did, probably never will. And this is something that Apple will gladly tote this is all due to optimization, and because Apple controls both the hardware and the software, this is the benefit. It is what it is. Where I think the iPhone X starts to pull away from a lot of the offerings on the market is just the sheer features of this phone. And I'm not talking iOS features. I'm talking like features that really matter, that's driven by hardware here. So for instance, the Face ID. Yes, the home button is gone and everyone was wondering. There were tons of talk about it. Apple can't do it. They're not going to take away the home button. Well, it's gone. And I've read plenty of accounts where people say Steve Jobs just didn't like buttons. He just felt like things should work. You should pick it up and it should work. And what Apple has executed on here, I think is quite amazing. This thing does not have a home button. So the obvious question is, well, aside from how the hell do you get home, we'll get into that in a little bit, but how do you unlock the thing? This is where the Face ID comes in. There's a ton of it's, what is it called, the truedepth camera. And this camera is aided by these 3 other technologies. That one does a beam, one has like it maps, puts these facial maps over your face, and it knows who you are, and they're calling it the neural engine, right? And this thing has the ability to grow with you as time goes by. So if you put glasses on, it still knows it's you. You put a hat on, it still knows it's you. You grow a beard, you cut your beard, it still knows it's you. Yes, I hear the cynics saying, oh, this is Android's had this for a while. Yeah, but not quite. I mean, the photo part of my S8 is actually what I do use, and it is relatively easy to unlock the phone, but it's not secure. You can fool that with a picture of me. Then there's the iris scanner, and the iris scanner is something that I refuse to use because it's an annoyance. I mean, this thing has to be a specific distance and height from your face, and it's very finicky. It's finicky on the S8. I don't care what anyone says. It was finicky on the 950 when I tried it back in Windows Phone. So obviously, which is what Apple did here, you need to come up with a few more aids to get rid of this finicky thing and just make it reliable. And no one's been able to do this and execute on this level. Apple, apparently not even Apple's been able to do this because it failed on the stage. But they eventually got it going, and I think it's dope. It replaces the home button. It replaces the Touch ID. It replaces Touch ID in apps like whatever your bank security app that you need to send, or when using Apple Pay. I think that's dope. Then there's also a lot of these dope attention to detail things like the phone, because of these different aids and that depth technology. The phone knows when you're looking directly at it. So if you turn the phone on and you're not looking at it, the screen just won't come on. But the minute you look at it, it says, okay, he's ready. There we go. Turn on the display. I think that's super cool. If anyone else turns on your phone and they're looking at your messages, it says one new message. If you turn on your phone and it sees you, it actually shows you, gives you a preview of what that message is. I think these are things that are well done, tastefully done, that not a lot of other manufacturers, if any, has been able to pull off the right way. And you gotta give it to them. Still talking about that camera, there's a lot of dope stuff that bleeds into the camera section of the phone, where the portrait, the front-facing camera's got a lot of the portrait stuff that you see on the back camera. That's super dope. That's going to change the game. But before we get there, there's the face mapping, and the face mapping does a few things. They showed off what is it called? Emojis, and this is pretty much random emojis, but they've given them this 3D thing, and because the face mapping is built in, the emojis adopt the facial expressions you have, and puts the face map in there, and when you talk, you see the mouth of the emoji talk. This is dope. I think it's silly as shit. I don't think I'll use it. Maybe I'll use it for the shit emoji. But there's no getting around the fact that, 5 years ago, people who just didn't understand looked down upon emojis. And just this article I read a while back that emojis is really the one true universal language, where or written language per se, where when you see a smiley face, you know it's a smiley face. When you see a frown or a shit emoji, you know exactly what it is. So in today's world, emojis are very real. It's a very real communication tool. And I think this animation thing is going to take it to the next level. It allows people to personalize it. It allows a message to be said with it. Something so small is going to have such a big impact, not only because of Apple's sheer number of volume or influence in the world, but I just think it's a dope thing to do. Other than the front-facing camera stuff that I think is super dope, you've got the wireless charging that they finally put in there, and they're using Qi. Good thing about that, and again, the cynics, oh yeah, here goes these features from 10 years ago on other phones. It really doesn't matter, because these features still didn't really take off. And now that Apple is here to save the day, now it's going to take off. So thank you, Apple, because probably I'm going to go everywhere and see wireless charging, and it'll work on my Galaxy. So I'm pretty happy about that. Then there's the AR. Augmented reality is something I believe in a lot more than virtual reality. I think it's a lot more useful. I don't quite think the same with all of these games and whatnot, but I think AR's got its place in the future, and it's interesting to see Apple's approach. Now, where it really matters, and it didn't matter when Google did it, is because Google was sort of just being Google. You know, it's dope, they're playing around, and then there's this one-off phone that you had to buy and was the only phone that would take advantage of that. And other than that, if you want to get anything close to some of that cool stuff, you got to get a Samsung, and you've got to be part of Samsung's madness. So here, what Apple's doing is this AR kit is going to be available on all iPhones going forward. That's a big deal. That's the type of shit that moves the needle, and no one else can do it, and Apple can. And I hear people in the comment section boiling. It is what it is. We just got to get over it. Now, the camera going to the dual cameras, this dual 12 megapixel cameras. We know the MO here. Lots of computational photography. Lots to do with the portrait mode. Apple is doing what they're supposed to be doing here. They've got it's a hardware chip somewhere, or maybe it's built into the main chip. I don't know. I was really confused when I was hearing that part, where the chip is responsible solely for reducing noise in the images. That's super dope. They're working very hard on color reproduction. They're working very hard on dynamic range. As a photographer, these are important things. These are things that are going to blur the line for people with the decision of, do I buy a real camera or do I continue to shoot on my phone? The augmented reality stuff, I think they knocked out of the ballpark. The portrait mode continues to be a joke for me, but I like really what I see with the lighting studio, where you can it's real time analyzing the image through this machine learning, and then it's imposing a look or lighting studio looks onto the image. I think that's super cool, especially when you look at the there's one they call Studio or Stage. No, there's one they call Stage, and it's pretty much like a low-key look. I'm gonna do a video about this, guys, so you guys can get really you can have a marker to measure just how hard it is to do low-key lighting, and it pains me to see that Apple can just do it via computational photography and none of my cameras can. That's dope. You gotta give it to Apple. I have no quarrels with the iPhone 10. I think it's dope. I think it's fine. I think it's a great phone to own. It stacks up to the competition. I think it passes the competition in a lot of areas that matter. I think it plays catch up in a lot of areas that matter, like the wireless stuff, the wireless charging. That's all fine. One of the questions I've been getting, because I've been getting tagged in Facebook fights and YouTube comments and Instagram groups, is what is the difference between this and the iPhone 8? I mean, I think there is a difference to validate the price difference and actually going for the iPhone 10 versus the 8. For instance, we both know they're the same processors and kind of the same cameras, except on the iPhone X, the cameras are stabilized, both of them. So the X has the true depth camera in the front, all those sensors, which means you're going to get the Face ID. You won't get that on the iPhone 8. The X has got the OLED panel, which is new for Apple. You won't get that on the iPhone 8. You won't get that super edge-to-edge display, okay? The X has got that, a lot of the studio mode that you can, the portrait modes you can pull off on the front-facing cameras. You can't get that on the 8. And I think the animations, the animojis as well, are exclusive to the iPhone X. So there's a bit of a difference there. I would advise anyone just spend the extra money and go for the X. Then comes down to the things I per se really didn't like about the phone, which wasn't much. But for one, I think the naming convention's off. This is the iPhone 10. It's being launched with the iPhone 8. So next year, will the iPhone 10 then become the iPhone 11? And then we're going to be looking at the iPhone 9? Like, that's too much. This thing should have just been the iPhone 9, then the iPhone 9 Plus, and then the iPhone Pro or 9 Pro, whatever you want to call it. But this is Apple's world, and they will rock it accordingly. The control panel now comes down from the top right on the iPhone 10. I think this is going to cause some mayhem, or at least for a few days, because there's no more home button. The way you go home is you swipe from down up. It's a gesture. And the way you multitask, as opposed to double tapping a button, you swipe halfway up, and then you see the app curtains or cards, whatever you call them. And then, of course, that gesture on the old iPhones used to be the control center. Now it's in the top right, so you swipe down. So maybe it's a lot more familiar for people who use Android phones. But I think for iPhone people, there's going to be some adjusting to be had there. And then there's just that little notch where the true camera stuff is being hidden. I don't like that notch on the front of it at all. But like I said, these are things that will go away over time as you use the phone. I think Apple did a good job here for the 10, for the big boy, and the launch of their new campus, and I think it's a job well done. Definitely some work after all these announcements and the efforts, and you see how Apple continues to think outside of the box in terms of solving an issue with this facial recognition stuff that no one can kind of get past. We were stale for a while. And how they just turned it into an algorithm and threw it on a processor. They are who they are, man. It just shows me that these Android makers, particularly Samsung, they still got a lot of work to do. And I stand by my comment that the Note 8 is a dope phone, but it's still not moving the needle. And then here comes Apple moving the needle, and now it's even easier to see how much the competition really just isn't that close. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this. You guys, hit the comment section. I want to know how you feel. I want to know your favorite part, your favorite feature of the iPhone 10. For me, it's hands down those cameras, man. That camera is dope. I like the True Motion stuff, though. I keep calling it True Motion. True depth. God damn it. It's so hard to say. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Plenty more content coming. My name is Ramon. I'm out of here. Peace. Well, I guess, and the reason we started Lifestyles Defined is because if we weren't on camera arguing about these things, the technologies, the phones, the iPhones, the Androids, the cameras, the games, we'd be on the phone arguing about it. We'd be in each other's houses arguing about it. So why not just put it in front of a camera for everyone to enjoy it the way we do? That's what Lifestyles Defined is all about. We just love